Hey everyone, it's MP here. This is our Season 5, Episode 3, the High Sparrow review. It's only 4 or 5 days late at the moment. Sorry about that. Had various issues come up during the week, so we are a little bit late. Claire, why don't you introduce yourself and give us your rating and your theme.
Okay. Hi everyone. Yeah, sorry we're late. I'm really enjoying this season, and I know that it's only going to get better, but third episode in, I'm really enjoying it compared to other seasons. I think this is just, it's full of surprises, and I'm really enjoying it for that reason. I think I would say I'm going to give this 3 links on the Meister's chain because I still preferred last week slightly better than this week. But I thought it was great, and the theme that we kind of talked about and that I discussed with MP after we watched the show. I mean, I watch it here on Monday, but we've just watched it again together today. And for me, I know a lot of people have talked about different themes, particularly Don Willie. Hi, Don Willie talked about religion and faith. Definitely, that's absolutely features in this episode quite highly, but I feel throughout this entire episode, pretty much in every single scene, there are 2 real predominant themes that come through, and one is around pride and the other is around shame. And there are lots of examples that we can give you about that as we go through. So yeah, that's my links on the chain. What about you?
This one I'm going to give definitely 4 links both ways, one for entertainment and one for symbolism and what you can dig into. Mm-hmm. Definitely very good. My theme, and as you say, I've had a lot of time this week to think about things because we didn't do our video on Tuesday, and I managed to watch the Small Council and other videos at Don Willie as well. And you had your theme ready to go for Tuesday if we could have made it, but the Pride and Shame thing stuck with me, and I've come up with the 7 deadly sins and 7 virtues, which I think are quite prevalent in this episode. So we will talk about those in a bit, but do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Before we do that, let's just remind people of what the 7 deadly sins are, because as we go through, we can remind people. So we've got, obviously with religion, we've got the 7, and there are 7 deadly sins, and we can see features of the sins and the opposing virtues in lots of scenes that we're going to highlight. Okay, so I'm gonna say what the sin is, and I want you to say what the virtue is. So,
sure.
The first one is lust,
chastity,
gluttony,
temperance,
greed,
charity and/or generosity,
sloth,
diligence,
wrath,
patience,
envy,
kindness,
pride,
humility.
Cool. Okay, so let's bear that in mind as we go through, and we come first to we open up with Arya again in Braavos, getting used to being in the House of Black and White, trying to figure out what's going on, and the theme being to serve. So there are a couple of scenes that we can focus on here with Arya. We've got her in the where all the gods and everything are in the pool.
House of Many Faces.
Yeah, where she is with Jaqen, and then she's with the waif, and she's by the water. So this is what we see of Arya in Braavos. For me, just a couple of things really. I mean, I'm sure you've got more to say about this. I think when it's pointed out that you do know who the many-faced god is, obviously it's death, and it just makes me think, you know, Arya's storyline around becoming a faceless man or retaining her identity. Is she an agent of death? Has she been handpicked by the faceless men, and she's just going through this she was always destined to be there? So there's lots of questions, and we still don't know really what she's there for and what's going on with the faceless men. And she says quite clearly, I didn't come to sweep floors. And I just thought, well, what did you come for then, Arya? What are you there for? Is it just circumstances? Is it because some strange man gave you a coin? Or do you feel that somehow this is your destiny? She's got a list and there's issues around.
Just pause you for 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
When you're talking, I don't know if it's your table vibrating or stuff, but your camera's bouncing up and down.
Oh, sorry, it's probably the table.
That's fine. It's fine. Just letting you know.
I'll keep still.
Don't have to still.
So what did you think about that first bit when they were when we're introduced to the different gods and the kind of ceremony of drinking the water?
Well, one thing that I've noticed, and this is just in our last rewatch and having seen everybody's videos up till now, but we see her first thing she's doing is sweeping. There is also a theme of cleansing in this episode. We have it with Arya, we have it with Sansa, and we have it with Tyrion. So I'm looking at that with my theme as being cleansed of the sins, but I'm wondering when she's sweeping in the room with the many-faced room, which I should point out too, that there's apparently only 7 faces, where in the books there's a lot more.
Yeah.
And questions about the drowned god. Do you think that wooden one with the wings, the wing-looking things, do you think that was the drowned god?
I'm not sure, because there are loads of different religions mentioned in the books. There's the child, and I think there's a ram there, so that might represent perhaps the lamb people that Miri Mazda is from.
Very good, yeah.
So that, there's lots of different gods represented. I saw the weirwood face.
Yeah, but in the show, she says she sees the drowned god and she sees the weirwood face, and I think he looks back towards that wooden one that seems to have it appears to be wood to me with like wings on it, like shredded wings. It's very strange.
Or it could be like crashing waves or something, and that could have been the drowned god.
Possible.
Maybe.
So anyways, I digress. So the sweeping and cleaning scenes with Arya, I think we have her cleansing the body later on, which I think sort of removing the sins from the person who's given themselves up. But I'm wondering, when she's sweeping the house, is she cleansing the house of black and white, or is that just part of her training and cleansing herself?
I think, well, it's her part of her training around being ready to serve.
Serving, yeah.
And serve the many-faced god rather than, have all the Arya Stark things around her. So, I mean, we move on to the next bit, which is the waif giving her a good smacking and saying, you don't know the value of the coin. Here, I think there's a lot of pride and shame. So for me, Arya saying, you don't know who I am, but you're about to find out, and she reaches for Needle, that's pride. That's completely, the waif is obviously, there's this kind of shame and pride thing going on in the room before the kindly man / Jaqen turns up. But yeah, is there anything from that scene before she throws her things away that you noticed?
No, not so much. Just that she was getting the shit kicked out of her and got stopped right before she was able to retaliate, which I wish we could have seen a little bit of. I should also mention that you mentioned Don Willie's faith and religion aspects. Nicolina in the small council did mention the Ballard O'Harris theme of servitude, which is also one of the prevalent themes. It's like a multi-themed episode.
Yeah, definitely. So she has to rid herself of Arya's things, and we see her at the water. We should point out, by the way, I should have mentioned at the beginning that we're trying not to stray too much into spoilers, but we may mention future events in the books that, so proceed at your own risk.
Thank you very much. We always forget to mention.
Particularly this scene here. This, for me, completely encapsulates. It's a crucial scene, both in the books and demonstrated on the show, around Arya throwing everything away except Needle, and she pauses before she throws the Faceless Men coin away. So she's throwing away the Faceless Men, but she keeps Needle. She has this kind of emotion. The acting is amazing. With Maisie Williams, I think she's just fantastic, and just that shot with Needle and with the tears in her eyes, and I think she just looks like a little girl. She looks like she's about 7 or 8 years old, and it's like, oh, that really kind of pulled me. So I thought the acting was superb in that scene, but it just epitomizes everything about Arya's struggle with her identity. Is she going to be a Faceless Man? Is she going to be Arya Stark? And again, it's always that pull back, and it's Needle and Nymeria and Jon and Winterfell, and doesn't matter what she's thrown in the river, there's something there, and I think we're going to see what happens next in a big way with Arya in the next book. So what did you think of that scene?
Absolutely, and before I go, you also mentioned earlier to me, what she does throw away is the coin once again, right?
Yeah.
She throws away the coin of I can't even think of the name right now, the Faceless Men, but she does keep Needle.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts on that?
Just that she's rejecting one and retaining the other in terms of her identity.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is what you explained to me before. So in terms of the sins and virtues of Arya, definitely pride.
Yeah.
Which is sin, but to me, it's also sort of can be both. Like, you can be proud of things, and it shouldn't always be a sin.
Yeah.
Definitely diligence as a virtue with her cleaning and working, and even in the show, we know that she's always going to be working at her training. So those are my two there. But I think being in the House of the Undying, and what she didn't do is actually cleanse herself fully. I think giving up her possessions and everything like that, sort of this Sparrow, giving up all your possessions and things like that, has that sort of effect. But so I think she was supposed to cleanse herself of sins and all these things, but she didn't.
And they're trying to teach her humility. Who is Arya Stark? You've got Arya Stark's things around you. You need to become no one. That's the ultimate in humility. So yeah, this is everything about pride and shame within that scene, where she's thrown her things away and what she keeps and what she throws away, and just the kind of anguish going on in that scene.
Emotions, definitely some shame there. Absolutely.
Super.
I do want to point out, she tossed away the coin purse, which is the Hound's coin purse that she steals off of him in the last episode, and the Faceless Man coin is kept out of it. Now, I won't mention this, and we're not going to get into it. There's also another scene with Brienne and Pod, and I believe he picks up a coin purse. The reason I do mention this is I think, and I could be way off here, but the coin purse is important. And in my own thinking and regarding the books, it is relevant to who Robb names heir of Winterfell. And I know that's very cryptic, but if you look at that chapter where Robb tells Catelyn who he's named heir without actually saying it, there's a lot of mentions of the coin purse in it.
Yes.
And the coin purse to me is always around children who are with a different person.
Okay. Arya Stark.
Jon had a coin purse that Arya stole off of him when she left him.
Yeah.
But that's as far as I want to get into that. I just thought I should mention it, and state that there is one coin left out of that purse.
Okay, so Arya Stark's stolen silver, and I'm getting from what you're saying in a cryptic kind of way, because I'm getting quite good at interpreting and embracing the pain. Is that maybe you shouldn't keep all your coins in one purse?
This is very true, absolutely, and it's very possible that the Mad King didn't keep all his coins in one purse either.
Possibly. That sounds cool. Right, we'll come back to that at another point.
Later. Not going to be in this show.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to say about Arya in Braavos in this episode?
I like these scenes better than I did last week's, that's for sure. Watching James in Small Council, and I actually had the same thought, but he extended it, and I'm not sure. When I first saw the waif, I thought she was blind. There's this one point where she's sort of just staring and not really looking at Arya, but then later on I thought maybe she could see. But it is possible that she's actually blind through all of this. Maybe,
yeah.
Not sure.
That might be a way of incorporating Arya's storyline if she's
blind girl. Absolutely.
Not blind in the show. So yeah, that's interesting. Okay, let's move to King's Landing then. So there's quite a bit of stuff going on here. We've got Tommen and Marjorie get married. There's a scene with Tommen and Cersei. There's also a fantastic scene with Marjorie and Cersei, and then we've got everything going down with the High Septon and the High Sparrow. So there's quite a lot of stuff going on in King's Landing, and certainly this is one of the places where we could really pick up lots of examples around pride and shame, and then also the
sins and virtues.
Sins and the virtues. So let's think about the scene with Tommen and Marjorie getting married in the light of the seven, so you can see the seven-pointed star behind them. And then later on, when they're in the room, to me it just made me laugh, because I thought he's got pride, and also it appears no shame at all at being king suddenly, because it's like, wow, you know, ding ding, completely hit the jackpot. I can't remember where I heard this, or where I read it, but at some point this week I came across somebody mentioning that it possibly could have been Bar, actually, in her video, about that's quite suspicious that Tommen was no, I've got no problem with Joffrey being dead, you know, and it's like, does that allude to him maybe being involved in Joffrey's murder? I don't know. Interesting, but yes, I saw both pride and shame with Tommen in the room. Then I think there's a lot of, you know, Tommen and Cersei later on. It's like the little lion, he's proud of his wife and he's kind of ashamed of his mum, trying to push her back to Castle Rock. And then you've got Marjorie and Cersei. Cersei's uber proud, so she's like the lioness pride. Obviously Marjorie's trying to kind of shame Cersei, so there's pride and shame going on all over the place in that scene. So yeah, before we get to the High Septon and the High Sparrow, is there anything that you want to say about those scenes with the Lannisters and Tommen and Marjorie?
Good point on the seven-pointed star being quite prominent. What I got is right before we cut from the wedding to them in bed with each other, it closes in on Tommen's eyes and he's staring at Marjorie, and you can hear we're just going to say it, sex sounds in that scene before it cuts to the other one. You hear this, and then it cuts. So definitely lust, no doubt about it. We got the lusts in there. A few things about the bed scene and we actually, forget it, I won't get into it, but you mentioned it earlier when he says that I'm the king married to the most beautiful woman, and it's all because my brother died. to me, this can also be applied to, in an offhand sort of way, not that he was king, but to Ned. This is what happened to Ned at the same point. He became heir to Winterfell and married to Catelyn, all because his brother died. So there's definitely a parallel there. But Ned always feels guilty about it, whereas Tommen doesn't.
Well, yeah, again, pride and shame and sins and
nice.
Yeah. So
one more thing, and then Marjorie, when she's sort of manipulating Tommen's thoughts, she mentions Cersei losing her husband, her eldest child, and her father, and that she'll never let you out of her sight. This can also apply to Catelyn. She lost her husband, her eldest child, and her father. So is she somehow watching Robb? Joined Robb? Just putting that out there. I do have a half of a crackpot theory where Robb warged Cat due to the face rake and the similarities with Six Skins, I believe, in the dance prologue.
There's loads of possibilities around the whole...
and it's very crackpot, but the insanity and then the laughter thing it sticks with me for some reason.
Right, let's think about the High Septon and the High Sparrow then. So we have, obviously, with he's got his own version of the Walk of Shame, but he also takes this pride in his position. I am the High Septon, and it's like, come on, mate, you've been busted. And yeah, that was quite a kind of like, whoa, sort of scene. And it was interesting again with I think you've got a lot to say about the sins here with the seven. But yeah, he chooses the maiden again and the stranger. And for me, it just made me think, oh, that's straight. He's chosen the stranger. Does that mean he's choosing death? And it just made me think of Arya. It chose the truth.
A good point there. If you contrast him with the High Sparrow, he makes that comment. We both talked about it earlier on in the week of I tell people that no one is special, and they tell me I'm special for telling them that. So the High Septon chooses death, but we have possibly a mention of no one who is death by the High Sparrow as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm just gonna say that the High Septon embodies all of the sins, the seven deadly sins. The High Sparrow probably conversely, although arguable, I'm sure, and maybe we'll see that progressing. I'm not sure, but at least in this episode, he seems quite holy and quite believable in what he's putting forward.
Yeah. So we've got, again, we can, lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride embodied completely in the High Septon in this episode, both in his Walk of Shame and his appearance at the Small Council. And later on, we see the chastity, temperance, diligence, patience, humility in the High Sparrow. I thought it was quite interesting, and we've spoken about this, and I always I'm trying to look for clues around faceless men, because that's a real mystery to me, and I really want to know what's going on there. Is when people say quite cryptic things like the High Sparrow said, no one is special. And I thought, does that mean he's a faceless man?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, incorporate that into it. He says no one, so is that a clue, or isn't it? Or is it just a regular statement?
Yeah. And also back in the with the High Septon and the Small Council, and he's like, he's kind of addressing everyone, and he gets to Qyburn, and he pauses because he doesn't know what to address him as, and Qyburn says, doesn't matter. And it just, again, it makes me think, are you a faceless man? I'm constantly looking for clues for faceless men. It's one of my favourite kind of mysteries, really, about what's going on with them. But yeah, that's everything that was going on in King's Landing for me kind of embodied the whole pride and shame theme. And again, there's lots of different references to the the sins and the virtues, particularly with the High Septon and the High Sparrow. When I watched it on Monday, I kind of missed the bit where Cersei pretty much condemned the High Septon and elevated the High Sparrow to that position. So obviously going forward into future episodes, we'll begin to see whether or not she's made the right decision there. So that'll be quite interesting to see how they tackle that on the show. Yeah, I just thought it was what was going on in King's Landing was pretty interesting this week. If there's nothing else to say about King's Landing, should we move on to the north, to Winterfell?
I'm just curious as to, you mentioned it, but without saying it, but I guess Cersei's cleansing will actually happen. I'm not sure what episode. I haven't gone through an episode read or anything like that, but that's definitely going to come, and I would use that as an example of her cleansing. I had the same sort of grab as you did with Qyburn saying it doesn't matter. If I was actually able to do the small council video this week when it came my turn to introduce myself, I think I would have said that. It doesn't matter.
That would have been perfect.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it. Yeah, let's move on. I think we touched on most obviously. The High Sparrow embodies everything there. Just the whole scene is just him being gracious and kind and generous, and it's all the 7 virtues. Take us away.
So there's quite a lot of stuff going on up in the north at Winterfell, and again, just going back to the themes for me, Theon in Winterfell, looking at the flayed bodies, and the torture. And just the flayed men flags everywhere. So there's you can see it's like the director has said, right, you've got to look like you're ashamed, and it's the whole shame thing coming through completely with Theon, particularly later on when he sees Sansa, and you can kind of almost see him cringing with shame, and you know that those two are going to run into each other later on down the line. So absolutely. There's I think probably shame was attached to Theon for me more than anybody else in this particular episode. But lots of stuff around pride with Sansa and Littlefinger. So, she has to swallow her pride.
And Shane as well.
Yeah. And she did, he's instilling the pride in the Stark name, but she knows that she has to swallow that. And I thought she did a fabulous job when she was introduced to Roose, and he said, because I would have smacked him across the face, welcome. Not welcome home or welcome back or welcome, just welcome. And
that stare down that she gives him right before, like, good.
Yeah.
10-second stare down of just looking at him, and then a little bit of a curtsy. Sure, that was beautiful.
And it switches into it. So lots of pride and particularly pride going on in those scenes. Sansa has to swallow her pride, and you can really see Theon's shame. I think, without going through it in detail, scene by scene, because we presume that people have watched this if they're watching this video. There was just a couple of things that came out for me in Winterfell when Sansa arrived, and there was the older woman that said the North remembers, and I immediately thought of Lady Dustin from the books, but she seemed to be in a kind of servitude position. She was kind of like she was a maid or something, which wouldn't be the position of Lady Dustin. I'm not entirely sure who that woman is, but again, that just kind of made me think, wow, there's going to be lots of stuff going on in Winterfell, and I'm really going to be excited about how they handle those chapters in the books. Were really fascinating for me, and beautifully written with Theon in Winterfell and the Boltons, and anyway, so the only other thing that I think I would mention is with Roose and Littlefinger, when they have their exchange, and it's like, okay, wow, right, well, that's made a bit more pointed about any kind of alliance between the North and the Vale. and Littlefinger harking back to an alliance. This has happened before, like before Robert's Rebellion, the alliance between Hoster and Ned's dad, whose name I can't remember. What was he called?
Rickard.
Yeah, so Rickard Stark, Hoster Tully, and all the kind of marriages and alliances. So that I just thought it was quite interesting. Littlefinger harking back to that. Yeah, there's loads of departure from the books here, but I still find it quite fascinating. I'm interested to find out how they're going to tackle.
Well, everything here is departure from the books.
Yeah.
I
But
suppose the mention of the North remembers, sure. We have a little bit of that, but I think you're right. I don't think that's Lady Dustin. Way too frail looking.
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I mean that's really all I wanted to say about Winterfell. I don't know if you've got anything about the scenes there. For me, the Pride and Shame was Sansa and Theon.
Yeah. For sins, we have gluttony for sure, with Ramsay shoveling food into his face.
Yes.
He's sitting there, and Roose sitting beside him, not doing anything. Little bit of gluttony temperance dichotomy there.
Yeah.
And tells him to stop it and listen to him. The cleansing scene, when Sansa meets the old woman, first thing she says is, you must want to wash. Like, Sansa has actually soiled herself by getting there. She's like, I'll bring you some water and something. You must want to wash.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a very, very cool scene.
Yeah.
And it goes to this cleansing theme throughout, of cleansing herself of dirty deeds, sins, whatever. She had to eat a lot to walk through those gates.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Littlefinger and Roose was a great scene, but I'll just go for. Do you have any ideas on what their sins would be? Roose I have for temperance, which is actually a virtue, and patience. And Littlefinger, you can apply that to as well, because they're both very patient men.
Yeah.
So, but lust and envy, I think, are both applicable. Boltons having envy of the Starks, Littlefinger having envy of any lord, which you actually get when he talks about Ramsay, saying, essentially, I know everything about every lord. I haven't heard much about you.
Yeah.
Ramsay says, I wasn't a lord, I was a bastard. But you realize that Littlefinger's got this vast knowledge of lordships and lords, something that I know you have a lot to say, and hopefully it will at a future time, unless you want to get into it now, about Littlefinger himself.
I think it's worth pointing out that Ramsay's girlfriend,
very envious.
Yeah, completely envious. Totally. I think before we move on to anywhere else, we
sorry if you can hear that, by the way. There's a siren going on in the background somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, before we move on, let's not forget about Brienne and Pod, because there was a quite interesting scene with those two.
Absolutely. Take us through it.
Well, she kind of, again, she was, well, the shame was that shame at her treatment of Pod, and she kind of apologizes, and he actually says, I am proud to be your squire.
Absolutely.
Completely shame and pride within that scene. And again, she said, I can't knight you. And I thought, does that mean that she will knight him at some point?
I think so, absolutely.
Yeah.
He will become a knight, and I do believe she's going to.
Mentioned that previously, I think, in the small council, when she said, she said, you can stand up now, Pod. And that was like,
yeah, hopefully that's a little bit of foreshadowing. That would be super cool.
Let's hope so. I'm really quite worried about the whole a man can be killed and Stannis, because I love Brienne. but I'm also a big Stannis fan, so it's like, I don't want to hear those kind of things, because I just think, are they going to, even if it's just in the show and it pans out completely differently in the books, I don't want to. I just think if it came down to it, Brienne's gone from the show if that happens, and I just don't want it to get there. But that seems to be her mission. You know, she couldn't do anything about the ghost, the shadow that appeared. But you know, Stannis has a face, he's real, she can get to him, and she saw Stannis's face, and it's like, so that makes me worry a little bit. I thought again that with Brienne, when she was talking about Brienne the Beauty, that whole story embodied pride and shame. When Renly said, the pride was, don't let them see your tears, don't let them see that they've got to you. So that's, pride, and that's what instilled the kind of loyalty in Renly. So that, I thought there was lots of pride and shame in that particular scene. What did you think?
Absolutely. Her mention of the story is, there's definitely pride there. Like she was proud that all these lords were dancing with her at first, until she realized the joke, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a bit of envy, and you have sorry, I can't think of his name at the moment. The brother, Renly, Lord Renly, boosting her up again, and it's not a lust for him, but it's a love for him, for what he did for her.
She's quite proud, she mentions he was the king's brother, so that's something to be quite proud of.
Definitely some pride.
If he's standing up for you, then
boost her ego. But her love of Renly, it's not a lust sort of love, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Might be a proud love. She's proud to serve him, if you want to go with the servitude.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. Pod's story about stealing the ham and his obviously pride in serving Brienne is very cool.
Maybe do you think there might be a little bit of pride in the name Pain?
Possibly. Absolutely. I do like how Pod deals with the women, for sure.
Excellent. Okay, so I think the other main place remaining that we need to deal with is what's going on at the Wall. So we've got a few things going on. We've got Jon Snow interacting with Stannis, and then following that interacting with Davos. We've got some examples of Jon Snow's initial command, where he's kind of giving people different jobs, and then we've got the whole scene with Slint at the end and him crying for mercy. So for me, there's lots of things here about, with Jon and Stannis and Davos, about the pride in the vows. And when Stannis leaves the room and Davos kind of lingers around, and the first thing he says is he sees something in you. I think that seems trying to instill the pride. Jon immediately says, I'm sorry, but I've taken a vow. So that's, again, pride, shame. And I think, yes, for me, those scenes with Jon and Davos and Stannis were kind of about the vows. And I just want to say here, because we see Ollie in this scene and we see all the looks and everything, and every time wildlings are mentioned, there's that obvious look between them. And I kind of struggle to get... I can see what people are saying about this. He's going to betray Jon, and he's going to be the one that stabs Jon. Ultimately, perhaps before the end of this season, because it seems to be building up to something. But there's also quite a bit of pride and shame, I think, going on there. And I just think, in the books, there's a character that I really like in the books called Satin, who appears later on at the Wall, and he kind of hangs around with Jon, and he's got Jon's back, and there's I think he's got a bit of a crush on Jon, perhaps. And I just wonder if there are elements of like Satin from the books, who's clearly not in the show, but maybe filtering through to this character, Ollie. And I'm hoping that he isn't the one to betray Jon, because I think there's so much history with the other men at the wall that would have much more of a reason, and lots of plots and kind of politics that I don't know. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen there.
You have to realize that the wildlings ate Ollie's parents.
I know, and it's obvious
through the wall.
I know it's obvious. It's an obvious choice, but I just keep remembering Satin for some reason.
That's fair enough. I still think Ollie will be the one to do it. But I definitely can hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Did you speak much about the scenes? I don't know if you were done or just giving us the run.
Just about the vows, really. And have you got anything to say about that?
Probably somewhere, but I don't have my notes ready. That's why I was hoping that you would keep talking.
Okay, I will then. The conversation that Davos has with Jon, I think there's a lot of the virtuous side of the seven, the sins and the virtues with Davos. So you have diligence and patience and kindness and humility. So there's quite a lot of the features in the list of virtues, which for me just kind of solidifies that Davos is just basically a pretty good guy.
Yeah, Davos.
Yeah.
In sins or virtues, the only sin I can think of for him, and that's, I believe, just from the books, is we know that he's cheated on his wife.
Yeah.
When he's away sailing and smuggling and stuff. But other than that, I think he probably embodies all of the virtues.
And he's
anything else. And in this episode, there's no sin that you can apply to Davos whatsoever.
Yeah. And he's also trying to instill, with the conversation about that, really kind of, recalling the vows, he's trying to instill that sense of pride and perhaps wrath and envy in Jon to try to get him to accept Stannis' offer, which is to take the North. And, it's pride and shame. Are you going to accept Stannis' offer, or are you going to stick to your vows? And it's the pride and shame going all the way through that. So we also see, which I think is a really great scene, Sam explains that Maester Aemon's ill and Jon's kind of taking command and giving people certain jobs, and he kind of, there's a pride and shame thing going on there with Alistair Thorne. There's a lot of kind of swallowing your pride and kind of feeling shame
between both of them, Jon and Alistair.
Yeah. There's a lot of that dynamic going on there. I was pleased to see that Ed was there, because I know a lot of people are upset about, I missed the famous quote, "Ed, fetch me the block." But Ed was there. It's not that they've completely got rid of the actor. He was there, and he was part of the group of the watch that kind of took Slint outside, and you could see him coming. There's actually a scene that I asked you to pause for me, where you can see Ed coming down the stairs behind Slint, and then somebody puts the block right down in front.
Did the block get put, or was the block just always there?
No, somebody random, nameless, put the block down in front, and you could just see Ed behind. And I thought maybe that's trying to appease book readers in some way, shape, or form. But I quite like that. There's clearly a lot of pride and shame going on in the interaction between Jon and Slint. And again, just to mention, as it's happened, every single episode, somebody mentions mercy in some way, shape, or form. So, and again,
mercy, absolutely,
it's been mentioned again there. So, what did you get from that?
I paid attention to the conversations, and this again, I feel like there's a lot of talking with reference to other characters in the history that you could be mentioning. Stannis to Jon, I'm giving you a chance to avenge your family, to take back the castle where you grew up. Now, to take back the castle where you grew up is kind of difficult, because I'm looking at this as a proposal to Ned himself, which to marry Catelyn, and have a chance to avenge his father and brother's death. Something similar could have at least been said to him. But to take back the castle where he grew up, well, we know that he grew up in Winterfell and the Vale after probably like 8 years each way, I think. And then he says, I wish I could fight beside you. I really do. But I swore a sacred vow that the gods would. Now, I really love this. It's Jon's pride, which I think is a great thing. He's not taking something that was just handed to him or just offered up. He's been envious of Robb. He says it last season to Sam. And he's always been envious of it. But he's already long ago put that envy aside. And he's just doing things himself, his own way, the way that
he's not greedy. He shows a lot of charitable traits, I think, Jon.
I think even his chopping off Slint's head was he gave Slint mercy. He paused, Slint looks away, and perhaps is even thinking he's getting away with it and going to be let go, and then his head's off, without him ever actually seeing it coming. I think Jon gave mercy there. He was very patient in the confrontation in the hall. He tried to let Slint get out of it, but in the end, Slint's obvious wrath there, and probably every other sin on the block you can attribute to Slint. So I really like that scene. Now this, I know we do get it in the books. There's definite wordplay in the books, and I think in the show it's possible for them to do things phonetically. And there's one thing that caught my eye, and I'm not saying this is done on purpose, but it's something that jumped out into my head.
Give it to me.
And I've said this to you, and you disagreed with me, but I don't like it just because of the way it sounds. Even if it's not intentional, we can apply it to it.
Hang on. Are we going to have our first on-screen row here?
Possible. But it says, this is Davos to Jon. And he says, he sees something in you. Might not be apparent from his tone, but it's the truth. He believes in you. And then Jon says, sorry, I disappointed him. He sees something in you. Might not be apparent, judging from his tone, but it's the truth. He believes in you, Jon. Sorry, I disappointed you. Phonetically, you could take that in a whole different route. He sees something.
This is where we usually argue about accents, because I don't. In a kind of American accent, to me, would say a parent, which sounds like a parent, but to me, I pronounce that word apparent. So I can't get what you're saying from that. To me, apparent doesn't sound like a parent. It doesn't. But the way you say it, it does, because you say.
Well, I'm pausing for purpose here. It's just apparent, but if you pause it and say parent, it adds a different tone to the thing, which Davos says. Judging from his tone, you can add a different tone to that sentence, and it could be something completely different. I'm just throwing it out there.
I'm going to put that one on the kind of missing list.
Fair enough.
Let's go to the final scene. Let's go to the final scene, which is our only flash of Essos, really, in this particular.
Hold on. I might not be finished yet.
I'll hurry on.
The other thing Davos says is, now I'm not a learned man, but the best way to help most people might not be sitting in a frozen castle at the edge of the world. This had me wondering is there another frozen castle at the edge of the world someplace? And could Jon possibly ever end up sitting in it? And then disregarding it to go help the people?
I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, it was strange wording. Of course, they're talking about Castle Black, but
Frozen
a
castle.
frozen castle. I can see the others and the Night's King living in a frozen castle.
Certainly sounds quite magical and ethereal. So
yeah, absolutely
interesting. Right, finished. Can we move over to the other side of the continent?
As you wish.
Right, okay. So we get Tyrion and Varis, and he's going stir crazy in the wheelhouse. Got to get out. And they visit the brothel, and they run into Jorah. Actually, that was kind of, although I watched the episode after I'd kind of listened to a few reviews, so I've been spoiled anyway, but I did notice earlier on at the beginning of the episode Ian Glenn's name in the credits, so it was like, oh, Jorah's going to appear, and so in a way that spoiled it a little bit for me. I'm just putting that out there, but yeah, in this particular scene, well, first let me just mention that I thought the cinematography was amazing for this scene when they kind of panned across
the rooftops.
Yeah, and the road to Volantis, and it had this real otherworldly kind of feel to it. Yeah, I thought that was amazing. When they arrived, before they got into the brothel, my favourite scene was Arya throwing her things away and keeping Needle. But I asked you, there was something that happened in this scene that made me think, oh, this is that. I think this is. Oh,
yes. This was an unbelievable grab on your part. This is.
Well, I asked you, and I asked you to just stop, pause, just go back again. And you asked it, why, what is it? And I said, the tattoos. Yeah, Claire, the tattoos. But anyway, this is what I saw from that when they were walking down the alleyway. Varis pointed out the slaves with the fly, so with the working the sewers, the slave with the hammer, so a builder, and the slave with the tears for being a whore. And I asked you to rewind it so I could watch it again, because it's a very short scene and they're just walking through the alleyway and Varis is behind him and he points these things out, and I think, and to me, it's the fly is Tyrion, his position in Castle Rock with the kind of managing the sewer system. The hammer is when Tyrion built the chain that fortified the defences in King's Landing in the Battle of the Blackwater Bay. And also you mentioned about him designing and making
I'm sure there's other things mentioned in the books as well.
Yes.
But the one thing I can think of that he definitely designed and built was the saddle, but I'm sure there's probably mention elsewhere.
And it's very quick, but it's just that boom, boom, boom. So this is your life story, Tyrion. This is who you are. This is who you are in Castle Rock. This is who you are who you were in King's Landing. And the tears, obviously, the kind of reference to Tysha and Shay, and he's very much in the books. It's referenced over and over and over again about where the whores go. So, and I just think those three, that it was almost like Varis pointing out, this is who you are. Look at the tattoos on these people as we walk past. And he gets to the very end and says, lest we forget.
Lest we forget, absolutely.
Oh my God. And I don't know what that means. I just thought it was a pretty...
Well, I think you're right. It's a way for Tyrion to remember who he is.
Yes.
Sort of just like Arya's remembering who she is.
Yeah.
Varys is ensuring that Tyrion remembers who he's been.
Yeah.
Beforehand. I thought it was a beautiful grab. That was great.
And again, Tyrion, you know, the little lion, Pride, Lannister, he just can't help himself with the shouting in the crowd about, oh, you know, about the saviour, and later on when he's in the brothel, oh, you wouldn't believe that I used to be one of the richest men in the world, and it's like, just shut up! You can't help yourself. He's just got too much of a big mouth. And again, that's in terms of sins. That's very much Pride, and he's a little lion. So there you go, proud. But again, I thought there were
lines, absolutely.
Yes, there were lots of references into when we get into the brothel, and you can see Jorah, the shame, and then maybe later on the potential for him to have some pride back when he delivers this prize to his queen, Daenerys, who I think is going to be Daenerys. And certainly, we know what happens in future events in the books. The only other thing that I would say about this particular scene in Essos with Tyrion and Varis is the preacher or the priestess. And I'm not sure whether or not that, because I think she's quite a well-known actress, and I think she's probably going to appear in further on in the series. And I just wondered, in terms of like translating that to book characters, is she going to replace Moqorro? So is she going to travel with, is she going to be kind of a merge of Septa Lemore and Moqorro, maybe?
It's very hard to say, and we talked about this earlier on last week, but you don't think that she's disappearing. That's not just a one-off. She's coming back. Like you said, she's been doing many things before.
Yeah.
Not just be in this one scene.
And I think if she is replacing Moqorro as a female character, replacing a male character from the books, it's almost like, for the show purposes, the complete opposite of, it's like a parallel to Mel, isn't it? So you've got Mel with Stannis, and then you've got possibly this female Moqorro with Tyrion and going on that journey.
Whoever ends up making that journey, still wondering if we get other characters showing up. I'm hoping so.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to say about this scene with Tyrion?
I found it interesting that she had the horror tattoo. She stares at Tyrion. I thought, because of the books and where do horrors go, to have this stare down and staring at each other. I'm not saying that that's who Tisha is or who Tisha became, but it appears that at some point in time they can also become priestesses. The other question I have is, do you think Mel has a certain tattoo in her unglamoured face?
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Because we know through her chapter that she sort of had the same arc as this woman here. Jorah's obviously looking at the Dany lookalike. There's a lust factor there. That's apparent there. So another sin reference. What do I have for Tyrion here? And that was me ripping a page earlier, by the way, people. I don't know what that sounded like on camera, but
there's
art.
There's lots there for Tyrion. There's lust, gluttony, pride.
Yeah, there's lust, pride, envy. What about Tyrion? His refusal, first wanting to sleep with the whore and then not being able to, and it just sort of washing over him. And again, we should mention that the whore right before then says to Tyrion, "We will have to wash you first."
Yeah.
So and I don't know if the fact that he refuses then is he's not ready to be cleansed of his sins, or like it seems, just watching the show before, I would have thought of the cleansing aspect, that he's having this cathartic moment in general anyways. But now I'm not sure if it's a refusal metaphorically when she says "we'll have to wash you first," and then he's like, I can't do this, and he goes out and takes a piss. There's something there as well. And the things that he says to her that I won't touch upon, but I do have strong thoughts on, and hopefully I'll get them out there to everyone at a later time.
There was a sense of shame there for Tyrion when she took his hand and said, we'll have to wash you. And I think he was just overwhelmed with shame about Tyrion, about Tysha, and more obviously Shay. So I think she just kind of reminded him of Shay, and it just stopped him in his tracks, really, because he's a darker person in terms of his mentality and his approach and his attitude, and he's sort of given up, and but he's still curious about what's happening and what's going on around him. And you could see when he was in the brothel and he was listening to somebody saying, "Oh, Mother of Dragons," and he kind of pricked his ears up, and you could hear that he's like he's not completely given up totally, but in the books he's very dark and suicidal almost.
Far darker, yeah. He's downward spiral at this point for sure.
So
your Pride and Shame also goes to the whore herself that he tries to pick up. She's envious of the Dany lookalike.
Yes.
So everybody wants her.
Yeah.
Tyrion, and the skeptical mind, which this is one of the reasons you're here with me. You have your own skeptical mind.
Diligence, due diligence.
Well, I'm not very diligent in my my research and my work. You're far more diligent than I. But
so, what was your favorite scene in this episode?
It's got to be that Jon chopping off Slent's head for sure.
That was a good one.
The whole wall scene.
Yeah.
I especially really like just the conversations between Jon and Stannis and Jon and Davos. And then, definitely at the wall.
Well, it's a bit of it's a kind of toss up for me between the Arya scene with Nebel and the tattoo scene when with the little tattoos.
Yeah, and I can definitely see why you would get there. Not having gotten that myself, it was just a walk-through scene where nothing happened. But no, that would.
Okay, so we're going to do this again next week, and we'll maybe try to be a bit more timely. Hopefully the sound and the visuals and everything are okay. And leave your comments.
You decided to cut us off already? Are we finished?
Are we finished?
I don't know. Apparently.
I don't know. It still says live on my screen.
Yes, we are still live, but you're signing us off already.
I'm not. I'm just asking, is there anything else that we need to talk about? We're trying to make these a bit quicker. Come on, snap.
And went through. I never actually got around to mentioning all the sins that we've seen throughout the episode.
Okay.
But there are people who want to rewatch and look for chastity. Of course, you can apply to Sansa at Winterfell there, but I don't have enough time to read all this. The cleansing theme I thought was also apparent.
Yeah, definitely.
And absolutely, your Pride and Shame is right throughout the whole episode.
Yeah, it seemed to be there in most scenes. So that's what I got from it. I was going to say something else then, and then I've now completely forgotten. I think it was just to sum things up, really, which was, for me, I thought this was a really good episode. I'm really interested in what's going to be happening in the rest of the season. I usually, last year, I watched this episode once a week, and that was it. And then I would listen to reviews. Now I'm watching it on Monday, and we kind of usually rewatch things together and just have a chat about things before we do the review. But I get so much more out of rewatching it's like watching a completely different episode because of the different layers to it, and it just reminds me of what the experience is like of rereading these books, which is just opens your eyes every time.
Absolutely. When you just watch the episode once, they're always enjoyable. But you repeat, and I think this was my third watch, the one we just did. Mm-hmm. And you pick up so much more each time, and there's something. And of course, I watched all the videos beforehand, so I had other people's thoughts in my ear but you're still able to hop out,
Yeah.
grab other things. One thing I did want to mention that I didn't is, did you notice that the Faceless Man coin, it's only one-sided?
Oh, is it?
And I believe the side with the stamp on it, it's actually a stamp of the Faceless Man.
Yeah, the
More
face.
noticeable in the last episode than it was in this one.
Right. I've noticed.
There's two sides to every coin, but in this case there isn't, and I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting. I mean, I have noticed the silhouette of the face, but there are no features. So that's, you know, that's obviously the Faceless Man. But I like that. There's only one side to that coin. I hadn't noticed it. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch now. Thanks.
She does. She flips it over, and you see it in last episode too. And I meant to bring it up in our last review, but I never did then. But she tosses it over, and it's apparent that there's only one side to that coin.
Yeah.
One mark side, anyways. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to mention, and I keep forgetting to do it, but if you haven't watched the Small Council or know of the Small Council, I will be putting the links to everyone's channel in here, and they go do their review on Wednesday live.
Yes.
7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I missed you guys this week. Hopefully I will be able to. Things are a little hectic around here at the moment, so depending on timing and what exactly is going on in this house at the moment, I might have to skip out now and then, but hopefully I'll be back soon.
Cool.
Links everywhere, and Tony and Bar have their Q&A coming up this morning.
For me this afternoon. And also check out, if you haven't already, Charlie and Westeros' recent video where he's out and about on the streets.
Absolutely. That was such a good video.
It's fantastic. I can't wait for part 2. Excellent. Okay, I'll see you next week.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Claire, for being here with me again. You don't know how much I appreciate it. And we will try to do it on Tuesday one more time. It's looking like it's not going to work, judging by past history, but hopefully we'll get there.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.